week's cut.
Hey everyone, we're doing work in progress number 4, heat, treat, and temper. This one's a little shorter than the others, around 20 minutes maybe. So here's our knife. It's got the clay on the spine. I let it cool in the air, or dry in the air. I don't put it in the oven wet and let it dry in the oven because that makes the clay expand and get all kinds of air pockets in there. So that works better for me. I've got the oven heating up, set at 1475 for 2 hours. It's been sitting there for 10 minutes. That's why it says 150. So that's a countdown timer. It's 2 hours, 10 minutes down is 150. I put the blade in, edge up, let it sit in there for 5 minutes to come up to temperature. I then open the door, put a magnet in there on a stick to check for magnetism. If it's still magnetic, we haven't reached our temperature that we need. That X there by the 145 means that it was still magnetic, so I need to leave it a little longer. So I left it in 2 more minutes before I start my soak time. So at 143, I check it again. It was non-magnetic. I start my soak time. I did a 3-minute soak, so I plan on quenching at 1:40. As far as the magnetism goes, the cutting edge is what I check. I check it all, but the cutting edge is what I'm worried about. So I make sure that cutting edge is non-magnetic before I start the soak. So here we are. It says 1:39, so I'm pretty close to what I said. I pull the knife out. I go straight down into my Parks 50 oil, my quenchant, pretty anticlimactic. It's not like the shows unless you got a really big blade or it's really hot. I pendulum back and forth, spine to edge in a straight line. If you angle that so that one side is swiping in the oil, it will tend to cool that side faster, and you can get blade warpage that way. It cools down pretty quick. Go ahead and hang it in the oil for a little bit to let it get to where I can touch it. Only takes usually 10-15 minutes. Here's the blade after quench. Kind of ugly. Most of the clay stayed on this one. Sometimes the clay blows off. You still get a hamon if the clay blows off in most cases. So that's not a problem. I've got an old nasty belt. I'm going to grind this clay off. Do not use a good belt. This clay just packs in those belts and ruins them. So I use an old belt. I check for warpage. Pretty straight. If it warps a lot and you do this, you just grind your tip off right there. So you need to check if it warped. Cleaning the clay off. Comes off pretty easy. The other side. We'll address warp blades down the road. I'll do an individual video on that. We won't include that in this one. It happens quite frequently. So clay's off the flats. Now I just lightly touch the bevels, get the clay off there. This also helps remove all the residual oil, which is kind of nasty. And in your temper, the oven burns that oil, makes your house stink. So that's all cleaned off. And I'm going to change out my belts to a better belt. And it's best to use a newer belt when you're doing this portion of it. So I've got a new belt here, a fairly new belt. The camera's in the way of me reaching around there. I usually am pretty smooth when it comes to replacing belts, but not when I can't get where I need to. That was painful to watch. All right, get the belt on there. Grab your blade again. I'm not worried about the flats now. I just want to get a peek at that hamon. You're not going to heat it up at all. You're just going to touch that, clear it off, get rid of some of that forge scale, and you can see it here. Nice, bright hamon. It's strange. When you do a crisp new grind, you see it, and then a few minutes later it disappears. But you can see it pretty good in this video. So that should be a good one. That's a sign of a good hamon. If you do not have a hamon, you need to thermal cycle your still and start over at the clay. Not a good thing. So it happens though. So that side also. I check both sides. W2 1095 or shallow hardening still, so you can get a good hamon on one side and have a soft spot running off the edge on the other side. So I usually check both sides before I go into the temper. So that looks good. Turned out nice. We're now in the kitchen for the tempering. I try to temper a couple blades at a time. It helps slow the heating and cooling down. So I've got a few blades in here that I'm going to add with this one in some foil, just to kind of keep it nice and toasty and a slow warm up. Some people will put it in sand and put it in the oven. I don't go to that extreme, but you're welcome to do that if you'd like to. The foil just keeps it in a nice little pocket. I've got my oven set. I think I somewhere in here tell you what I've got it set at, but this first one be around 375. Put it in the oven. It's already heated up to 375 and sat for a little bit. Ovens tend to heat up fast. Oh, I lied on this one. So don't do as I do, do as I say. It's one of those. Oh, no, it was going. That was just the timer. So I set it at 375 for 1 hour. I put 120 in there just to be safe, but and then let it cool down in the oven. For the second temper, I raised the temperature a little bit, 390 Fahrenheit, for 1 hour, and then let it cool in the oven. That'll get it nice and toasty. You can do 2 at 390 if you want. I just tend to move it up a little more as I go. I'm looking for that straw color in the blade. Sometimes your ovens are off a little bit, so anyway. So that's all I do for the tempers. I thought I'd add in here a stainless. There we go. So this is one of my guardless fighters in AEBL steel. I thought I'd show you a plate quench. So these are 2 1-inch thick aluminum plates. This is how you quench stainless blades, or at least how I do it. Get 2 clamps. You don't have to clamp heavy, crazy, strong. Just these do fine. And then you get some compressed air, and you just blow in there to cool that off a little quicker. So blow that heat out of there. Those plates help keep your steel flat. It also pulls the heat out of that steel quick. So that is a quench. So if you hear about a plate quench, that is what this is. It cools down pretty quick. I'll just let you enjoy the blowing of the air through the plates. All right. Should be cooled off. Go ahead and pull it out. Now it's cool enough to touch. I cut it open. This is stainless foil. It's like razor blades. Almost always when you use it, do you end up cutting yourself? Especially when you use scissors cut, because it creates a serration. So you just have to be a little careful when you're using it that you don't slice your fingers open. So there is your heat-treated guardless fighter. This one's not spoken for. We'll be selling it here. See if I can get time to finish it. I do have some orders I got to get going on. So that was completely unrelated to the work in progress, but I thought while we're doing heat treat and that kind of stuff, we'd show you. Appreciate you guys listening. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them down below. Next time we will machine finish and hand sand. That should take up one episode. We might add on top of that the logo etch and polishing out the Humon. Stay tuned.